On three. One, two, three. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're so glad that you're here. As always, I am your host, Lauren Ash, and as always, I am joined by my co-hostess with the mostess, Christy Oxborrow. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I got a
Hey,
lot of positive things going on. I came into this really hot.
I couldn't be happier.
To give an update from the last episode where
Please.
I was talking about the WHL team, the Moose Jaw Warriors. They were in the midst of the championship finals.
Yeah.
They swept it.
Hey,
For the first time in franchise history, Moose Jaw Warriors are the WHL champions.
that's
And
amazing.
this happens to be their 40th anniversary as a team. So it just kind of is a beautiful thing. So they're off now to the CHL championships. Good luck to them again. Beautiful thing. I mean, I was very choked up because I'm just so proud and watching, like, when you go to a game and you witness like grown men yelling at them because they, let a goal in, or they, you know, missed the puck or did a terrible pass or something. It's just grown men yelling at them. I'm always very quick to go, those are children.
Yes.
Like, these are like 16 to
Yep.
21-year-old kids. And
Oh,
so I'm
yeah.
always like, they are children. But in that moment, watching them win, I was like, these are children. And this is like peak for them in this moment. So I was like, this is very incredibly impressive. Um, but also the other positive thing, which I mean, I love that I feel I have to explain it. Um, I don't know if I mentioned it on the show last year or if it was just on Patreon, but
Mm-hmm.
this weekend
Ah,
is the long weekend in Canada.
yeah.
And my husband has taken two of our children camping for the weekend.
Right.
So for the most part, it's just me. My oldest is here as well, but he kind of like he's an adult. He does his own thing. So I don't have to cook for him. I don't have to do anything. So last year I referred to this as my rumspringa
Of
because I could
course.
I could go out into the world, and I'm not a mom, I'm not a wife. I'm just like a single person, no kids, doing whatever the fuck she wants.
Hell yeah.
For instance, tonight I made myself the largest batch of fajitas in the world. And some people might be like, why fajitas? The answer is because pretty much I'm the only one who eats peppers of
Mm,
any kind. So I never serve fajitas to my family. So I've always choose this weekend when they're gone to like make the stuff that I'm going to eat that they won't. Like for lunch, I had some tuna and I loved it because my husband hates the smell of tuna and is like, if you could not, or at least warn me when you make something with tuna. So I choose not to make tuna anything just for the sake of trying to not be overwhelming for him. But like, he was gone 10 minutes and I'm like, can opener, here we go, baby. Just get that tuna out. And
yep.
it's just like, I'm going to be a college kid on spring break. I'm just going to do whatever the fuck I want. I'm going to go
Yep.
to bed when I want. I'm going
Yeah.
to lay around. I'm going to binge. I mean, my plan for tomorrow is just a straight binge of the entire series of Fleabag.
And I am so excited for you. I
Yeah.
can't wait. I mean, look, and no pressure, obviously, be in your own world,
I'm going to
enjoy
text
your
you constantly. I want you
I
to
want
know.
updates. I want
Possibly
constant
every
updates.
episode, I'll give you my feelings.
I already know I already know 2 texts that I'll get.
Oh,
I
I
should do
can't
the
wait.
Johnny Carson game. I should write them down and seal them in an envelope now because I know 1 for sure and 2
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, but there's 1 for sure that I know I'll get.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah.
And the joke is this weekend where I'm like, will I miss them? Of course. But it's just I never get time in the house where I'm by myself.
Right.
So it's wild to just be here and just lay around and do whatever I want. Unfortunately, there are still messes to clean up. It turns out I make a mess. Um, I always knew I made a little bit, but I thought the majority of the mess I was cleaning up after them. But
Right.
even with them gone, somehow shockingly, there's still dishes and there's still, stuff like that. I'll just leave them and do them very quickly before everyone gets home. So the house looks half put together. Um, but not unlike when you and I make plans for a trip. I had planned, I was like, this weekend, I'm just gonna lounge around and I'm gonna go through Fleabag, and then I was gonna either do Yellowstone or Bridgerton.
Right.
It was
That's
gonna be
right.
one of those. That was gonna be my plan, and I was like, "I'll put up, like, a fun little, poll on Instagram and see, like, just pick whichever one people vote for the most, and that's the series I'll start. It'll be great." Well, I didn't do that because I know myself, and I
Yeah.
know that when it comes down to it, once Fleabag is done, I I know I'm gonna pick something really random instead, and I think I've already chosen it. I'm gonna start going back on Eurovision.
Okay. Past years.
Yeah. Now I spent a solid week deep in Eurovision where I'm watching because there's like 38 entries or whatever it is. You watch each of their music videos, and that's a chunk of time. And then you watch the clips of their rehearsals, and then you watch the semifinals, which are 2 different episodes of 4 hours or whatever they are, and then the finale. And so it was a chunk of time. So that was like a week of my life in the 2024 Eurovision. But then I watched it last year and I only watched just the finale, and then the year before, I watched part of the finale, but that was what made it was just we saw it on I think it was on YouTube that we saw, and then we just ended up we put it on TV because I was watching it on my phone and I was so enthralled with it. My family was like, "Put it on TV, we'll all watch," and then we all got so into it. My son almost didn't go to work because he wanted to see who was gonna win, and we were cheering for countries that we didn't even know existed, like, it was a whole thing. So I think I'm gonna start at 2022, and I'm gonna go through the whole thing again, and then I'm gonna do 2021, and I'm gonna get deep. I
I
don't think
love
I'm
it.
gonna do the music videos, I think I'm just gonna do the semifinals and the finals, which is easily still 8 to 12 hours.
Wow.
A season. Yeah, like, per year, so it's gonna be a chunk of time. I mean, I might skip through some stuff, just to make it go a little faster, but,
Now, are you going to go back to a certain year and then, pardon the phrase, come back to the future? Or are
okay.
you going to slowly go back in time?
Um, I think I mean, it would be smart if I picked a year and then moved forward because whatever country it's in, that's who won last year.
Mm.
So if I pick one and they're like, "Hey, this is the host country," then I'll automatically know, well, if I
Ah,
watch the next one, I'll know who won. But I think at this point, some of them I already know people who won in certain years, so I'm okay going into it knowing the winners. Um, so I think I'm gonna start at 2022 so I can give it the full look, and I think I'm gonna then go back, um, each year. And I mean, I had said to my husband, I was like, "You know what? I spent a week deep in Eurovision, and that was enough for me." Like, a week was just the perfect amount of time. And then today I was like, "Remember how I said that?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, it was the perfect amount of time for those songs. I'm ready now to go in for another set of songs." So, yeah, I think I'm gonna hit 2022 and then work my way backwards because I also don't know how far back I'll be able to go or how
right.
far back I'll want to go. I don't know.
Now I gotta ask you this. Is
Yeah.
part of it, do they do what they do on American, sort of reality shows? Did they tug at the heartstrings? Do they make the video package about each person and it's like, "This is Tommy. He grew up in a boot, and
You know?
he spent his whole life
Mhm.
trying to live up to what his dead father hoped for him." Like, are there those stories, or is it much more pragmatic?
First of all, the idea I'm already written a story that Tommy is, the son of the old lady who lives in a shoe.
Yeah. Yes.
I
Yeah.
like that a lot. Um, I mean, they do show, like, a little video that's just like, "Here's this person," but I don't think they ever do, like, I mean, well, there was the guy that got kicked out this year after making it to the finals.
Right.
Um, they did say that when he was younger, like when he was like a kid, he told his dying father he was one day going to make it to Eurovision and sing a song for his father.
Okay.
So that was mentioned. And then, of course, there was the whole incident that went down, and the guy was removed from the show. But I think that those are mostly just interviews that they do because, of course, all the acts will do interviews with anybody that'll have them, and that's when they do the emotional stuff. Most of it is just like, here's this person, they're this years old, this is what they do for a living, they came to Eurovision because of this, and here they are, and then that's kind of it.
Right. Which feels ultimately more it feels more fair. It feels like I feel like when I'm
Sure.
sometimes when you're watching like American well probably North American. I won't take Canada out of this, but when you're watching it's always like whose story is the saddest. You know what I mean? Like it feels
Oh,
like that's
sure.
almost a part of it when you're coming to competition shows where
Oh,
it's, you know,
100%.
yeah.
I mean, things get mentioned. I mean, I it also depends on which feed you watch, because if you watch like the regular feed, they're probably a lot nicer than Graham Norton is. Whereas he'll be like, she thinks she can sing. She can't. And then her video plays. Like he will tell you it is what it is. And I couldn't love him more. I love him as a personality. I love him as an interviewer. I love him as an author. I just adore him entirely. But one of my favorite things, God, I wish I had that paper in front of me. I wrote a couple quotes of his from this year that made me laugh so hard. But one of my favorite things, one of the acts was a set of twin brothers who apparently have been famous in like Norway or something since they were 9 years old,
Okay.
like known as singers or whatever. And it's in the opening bit where it's only like a minute or two long video where it's showing them, and they're doing like selfie pictures, and like it's just like b b-roll basically of these
Yep.
people, all of this. And then Graham talks over it, and he's like, I actually met those boys this morning having breakfast at the hotel. One of them was nice. And it was one of my favorite things. He was just like, "Ooh, Graham, but which one?" And then the song starts. It's he makes it so much more. I think I would like it, like I would enjoy it, but with Graham, he just adds it. He takes it
Right.
to the next level, and because that's what I want. I want someone to just say what I'm already thinking,
Right.
even if it means, not overly being nice. He's never like incredibly mean.
Right.
Simon Cowell has said so many worse things than Graham Norton's ever said, but yeah, I live for it. I love it. It brings me joy. I end up liking songs that I never think I'm gonna get into. Like the amount of times I shouted the word Croatia during this year because that was my pick. That was my
Right.
number one pick. I was ready. I was like, that's who I want. And then I mean, I won't get into it because it'll take too long, but the whole thing is they'll do their song. There's ends up being like 25 of them or whatever at the end. They do the song, and then judges from all the different countries get to vote. The Europe and Australia, because they're part of it too. So they all get to vote, and they give everybody between, I think they give 1 to 8 points, and then they also give 10 and 12 points. So then they go to each country and show like a video live feed. And they're like, hey, we can see all the points they've given out to the different countries. Then they're like, who do you give your most 12 points to? And then people say, and it's a big deal, and we all move on. The amount of times that they would say a country and I would go, what about Croatia? Like it was like, to be clear, the band or gentleman, I'm not sure if it was all of them or just the one. Croatia, his their name was Baby Lasagna.
Oh, I'm already in.
And that's something I was like, I'm not gonna be into it, but I fucking loved it. I was so deep in it, and I was screaming Croatia. They didn't win. They came in second,
Oh,
but And this is something I need someone to explain to me because the internet has let me down. The internet does not know
Okay.
because they do the jury votes. You get those votes. Then during the like they're dragging this whole process out because at some point they open up the voting. You can call, you can text, whatever. And they only recently, either this year or last year or something, opened it up to a worldwide vote,
Ah,
as well as the voting from the European countries.
right.
So then they'll be like, here's the leaders after just getting the jury votes. And they have like hundreds of points and all of this. And then they go through each of the countries, starting at the who has the least points, and tell you how many points the fans, like the TV viewers, have given you. And those points can range from anything to from 0 to like 300 and something, but they never explain how those votes are calculated. Like
Mm,
how does one country get 14 but another gets 337? And then I was like, okay, maybe it's like they take all of the votes and they decide we're only going to give 1,000 points. So somehow they use percentages to figure out how many of 1,000 votes would that country get. No, no, no. It's more. I added up all the points given by the viewers at home, more than
right.
1,000. And then I Googled it and they were like, yeah, nobody knows. And I'm like, how does nobody know? Because you could go from last to first place just from the fan vote. Like Croatia, bless them, were not doing well with the jury vote. They did okay, but then fan vote, they got the top number of fan votes of everybody. They got 300 and some, and it put them in first. And then, of course, the person who got like almost every single top jury mark got a little bit of fan vote, and it was enough to put him over the top. And so I'm
Interesting.
just fascinated by how the fan vote works because I'm like, how does that, you know, how does how do they calculate that? And then you realize how fucking cruel it is because they like there was this year, unfortunately, it was the UK. They've got cameras on you. They're showing you. And then they go, "Okay, the fans have decided to give you this many votes." Well, UK this year, the fans have given you no votes.
Oh boy.
And that, I mean, that poor kid, they got to sit there and smile and grin and bear it and just ignore the fact that not a single person worldwide wanted a single vote for you. Like you hear vote like 4, 13, even those are hard to hear, but 0? I'm like, that feels like he was already lower down on jury votes. So it's like, just
Think of Tommy. He
lie,
grew up in a boot. His mother was an
right?
old woman who lived in a shoe and had so many children she didn't know what to do. She put Tommy in a boot.
Yeah. Well, when you have too many kids for the shoe, then they got to go in the boot.
There you go.
But
Now,
yeah,
I've done a quick Google here, and I just wanted to let you know that baby lasagna is the gentleman's professional name.
thank God. Okay.
Marco Purisic? Purisic? He's known professionally as baby lasagna. And then I
Yeah.
thought, is it that baby lasagna translates to something in Croatian that's like tongue in cheek? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I'm just going to play for you. This is what it translates to in Croatian.
Dječje lazanje. Dječje lazanje.
I don't know if there's just a joke that we're not getting or he just thinks baby lasagna is a cool name. I don't know what to say to you.
My hope is that he heard the word lasagna one day and was like, that word's amazing. And then was like, let's just run with it. Maybe lasagna is his favorite food. Like, I don't know, but I'll say it. I heard the song and went, I don't know. And then when it was coming to rehearsal, I was singing along. Like there's a part in the chorus where I was like, oh, okay. I was singing with it. And so I was like, shit, no, that song got into my soul. And then when it came to the semifinals, I was like, yep, here we are. Because it's so hard to keep them all straight. which is why I
Right.
make myself a document to watch with multiple colored flare pens so that I can color coordinate whether I like the song or not, because that's what normal people do when they're watching a show.
Listen, normal
Yeah.
is a relative term. I just want you to know I pulled up a Reddit thread about where did the name come from. There's a lot of answers saying that he apparently said it was just random, that he doesn't even really like lasagna. He prefers pizza. He should have named himself Baby Pizza. Um, this comment, though, I really like. It's no different than Smashing Pumpkins or Hootie and the Blowfish or Vanilla Ice. Over time, you just get desensitized to the whimsy.
Desensitized to the whimsy sounds like a death sentence.
Yeah.
I want to always be tickled with whimsy. But yeah, I bet it's like The Simpsons with the B sharps.
Yeah.
The more you say it, the less funny it becomes, and suddenly it's like, well, yeah, it'll work. But look, if nothing else, he got it. It's stuck in my head. You
I'm
don't forget
delighted.
baby lasagna.
Baby
You don't.
lasagna is not something I'm letting go of. It's also because
Yeah.
of my, of course, deep love of Garfield and the Garfield franchise.
Course.
This is a complete left turn, but can we bring back Garfield and Friends? There's a
Oh,
lot of rebooting happening all over our world from our
sure.
youth. And what about Garfield and Friends?
Oh, yeah.
Remember the egg?
The little with his little legs sticking out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was a solid Saturday morning.
I think we might have talked about this on this show before. I don't know. It was either this or Patreon. But the point is that I just think pound for pound, scene for scene, episode for episode, it lives up. And I say that
does.
having not viewed it since I was a child.
Oh, there's no chance I've seen it in the last easily 30 years. But
I'm listening.
solid programming.
Right?
There's no way I won't say it wasn't solid. And the thing is, to me, the pure magic of the program, again, haven't seen it in 30 years.
Same.
Because you'll have the cartoons featuring Garfield. And then we'll switch it to the friends that are on the farm that does not feature Garfield. But I'm going to say it to quote you, pound for pound, those non-Garfield guys got there and they held their own.
Where's that movie? Show me
yeah.
a Garfield and Friends picture set on the farm.
Okay,
We've got all these.
listen.
What are we doing? Now, listen, I don't want to disparage the new Garfield movie before it comes out. Okay, that's not what I'm about.
Mhm,
I'll be there. I'm gonna get the collectible bucket. Like, don't worry. Like, everything's gonna be fine.
mhm.
I'm happy to give them my money. And because two things can be true at the same time.
Of course.
And also, there's all these new characters. You know what I mean? They're putting in all these new characters. They're showing us characters we've never heard of before. Wonderful. What about everything you've already set up? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Go back to Garfield and Friends. Let that be what guides you.
Yeah.
I'm out of control. And I know that.
Oh, what I love is there it is. I was like, you'd said something and I already forgot. God, my brain is the worst. The fact that you called it a picture,
Yeah.
I deeply liked.
Out of my head.
I'm also fine with a movie that's literally called And Friends. And it's just literally the farm guys.
Yeah.
Because that was there someone named Orson?
Yeah. Wasn't that the pig?
I think so.
I think
And then
so.
there was like a really sassy duck, wasn't there?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh God, I'm gonna have to do like a quick Google on this show. Again, it's
Yeah.
been so long, but it was one of those where sometimes you watch a show and they'll have the regular show and then they'll have like snippets of like other shows and whatever. Or
Right.
like this one was like two different cartoons kind of slammed into one. But I was never disappointed
No.
when it switched over to
Same.
the farm because those characters were compelling. 1988 to 1995.
That's a decent run.
That's a good run.
Can I get my hands on some DVDs? Are they selling them on DVDs?
Roy Rooster.
Get out of my head.
Orson Pig,
Orson Pig.
Wade Duck. Wade was timid, right? Scared of
I
everything.
think so. Was it Mallard? Was it Wade Mallard?
Well, they have him as Wade Duck.
Okay.
Wade Mallard. No, that was Drake Mallard. I was like, that might
That's
be
what I'm
Darkwing
thinking
Duck.
of.
But
That's what I'm
that's
thinking of.
Darkwing. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
Darkwing. Oh God, it's not as helpful when I'm just going through IMDb because I'm like struggling with the names. I'm like, was that one of them? I don't know. Victoria Jackson did some voices.
Oh, that makes sense.
And Tress MacNeille, of course, because she's everywhere.
Of course.
Well, then I just need to Garfield. I'm spelling it incorrectly, and Friends, and just see what happens. God, they're cute. Oh my God. And the duck, Wade, wore like a swim ring around his waist that had a little duck head on it. And I think the duck head moved and talked.
Geniuses were behind this moment
It's
in our cultural history.
like, I know this shouldn't be the first thing I think of, but as soon as I'm seeing like pictures of it, my brain just goes, oh, I should get that tattooed somewhere.
Yeah.
Why is my first thought tattooed? What about maybe like wall art for your home? Maybe go there first. Oh, well, I think with a tattoo I can enjoy it forever. I don't know what's happening. It's just I'm sure the people absolutely love just listening to me Google. I mean, look how cute they all are.
It's again, it's so cute. I'm gonna have to watch some of this and
Yes.
pray to God it holds up.
Oh, it has to. I have to believe it does.
Yeah. Now listen, one last thing before we get into it. I
Yeah.
have to shamelessly plug that I've got a series of shows coming up in Los Angeles. My boyfriend and I are writing a play.
Hey.
We're writing a play. It's called We've Never Talked About This Before. And June 27, 28, 29th on Instagram at my bio, you can get tickets. I'm very excited about it. You know, it was one of those things where we were talking about wanting to do something together. It's like, what are we going to do? And I was like, what's something I've never done? I've never written a play. I haven't even done a play in like, my God, since high school, probably a full
Sure.
play. Not since high school. I was like, how am I going to memorize this thing? I'm used to memorizing for TV where it's like, you memorize it quick and then it flushes out of your brain as soon as you're done. So I'm like, this is going to be a real challenge. Sure. But we're so excited. It's yeah, I'm very excited about it. And I hope people will come to the show. If you're in, Los Angeles, Southern California region, all of the above, please come join us. It'll be great.
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And look at you going out of your comfort zone, doing
Yeah.
something you've never done before, writing a play,
Yeah.
starring in a play.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Yellowstone or Bridgerton?
You do a lot of work. You work very hard. I'm not going to let you talk about my friend that way.
Today I consumed cookie dough almost the second my family left. Just because it was like parents are gone. Forgetting that I am one of those parents. And then fajitas to the point of just illness, like so many. And I'm not even talking a fancy fajita.
Right.
I'm just like, I got one of every color of pepper.
Mm-hmm.
And then an onion. Got a nice saute on that. Added a fajita mix. Then I had some skinless, boneless chicken that I made the other day that was a lemon parmesan. I just sliced that up.
Oh, okay.
Tossed that in. Added a little extra chili powder just because. And then added in some rice. And so I have this massive vat. And then I got a nacho cheese blend cheese.
I'm
that I
listening.
put in the tortilla first, put that down, and then then it was like 7 seconds to heaven. I know it's minutes, but it
didn't take you that long.
It didn't take me that long. I guarantee. Yeah.
I gotta say, couple of things. I'm going to throw something out to you. You can tell me to go fuck right off.
I
You can
never
tell
would.
me to go eat a dick. Okay. Whatever you want to do.
I never would.
I know. Everything you're saying, I am
Yes.
100% on board with. Mushrooms. I know it sounds insane.
Oh, I considered it
Yeah.
and then had a thought of like, I ended up deciding no because my oldest hates mushrooms.
Mm.
And I thought, in case he might be interested, here you go. He did turn around and say, "Why don't you make this more often?" And I said, "Well, because the 3 people not home don't eat this." And he was like, "Meh, well,
Yeah.
they'll find something else." I was like, "Well, I suppose that could be the thing." But that's the whole point of this weekend is just to lay around and eat things. And the beautiful thing is I don't have to cook. Now I can just microwave the rest of it because there's so much left over that it will now feed me for the next 3 days.
Feed me, Seymour.
Yeah, thank you very much.
My last suggestion you didn't ask for because you don't need it. What you have is perfect. Fritos. Frito-Lay Company has a little
Yeah,
product. I don't know if they have it in Canada, so this may be pointless anyway, but
sure.
they have a little product. It comes in a little can,
Okay.
and it's a cheese, cheddar jalapeno cheese sauce,
Oh, yep.
and it's thick. And I was
Oh.
very skeptical because I'm like, I don't need it. I don't need a cheese sauce and cheese. I've got all these other things happening. We were making chalupas, and I was like, we don't need this as well as everything else.
Mhm.
But I said yes to it
Of course.
because I knew ultimately in my heart and my soul and my gut that that was the right thing to do, and it changed my life.
Oh, I
It's
like a
everything you want
spicy
it to be.
cheese.
Yep.
I do.
And it's the perfect amount where it's not overpoweringly spicy. It's just that
Okay.
little bit. Oh, my mouth's watering.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need to see if I can find it because
If
this
you have it, I really honestly recommend trying it. It really was worth it.
I mean, this is it. This is what it's all about. I also don't think that I'm not also gonna be consuming Ben& and Jerry's at an alarming rate
And I want that from you. For you
because
and from you.
I made a comment jokingly one time saying
Yep.
like, "Oh, if anybody ever wants me to try all the Ben& and Jerry's and then tell them how I personally feel about it," and one person did. One
And
person
that's all
said,
she
"Yes,
needs,
please."
folks.
And I have tried over half the flavors. I've got a rating system. I'm taking this very seriously.
You should be on the payroll. They should be paying you for this.
Oh, they absolutely should be. Except if they did pay me, I probably wouldn't be as honest as I'm gonna be, but there's a couple of flops so far.
Well, I can't wait for the full report.
Oh, it's gonna take a chunk of time.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
True crime and Ben and Jerry's. What a
Yeah.
dream. Well, before we get into it, what you drinking over there? Anything special?
Well, I mean, I'm practically home alone. I'm not really. But loosey goosey this weekend. So
Yeah.
I'm doing a rainbow twist Pombe.
My gosh. Well, listen, what am I into? My favorite thing, of course, as of late, the Sunny D vodka seltzer. I can't get enough of
Nice.
these things. And I
Good
got a
for
water,
you.
but listen, um, the break can't come fast enough because then I can get a refill. I'm kidding, but also can't wait. Um, Now you love this. We're talking, of course, the Netflix documentary "What Jennifer Did."
Yes.
This is very new onto Netflix. I saw it, I viewed it, I texted Christy, and I was like, "This is of interest" because I just found it to be such a fascinating story. Now you've been good enough to make sure that you've written in phonetically everyone's names, and she does that for me because she knows. And I forgot to ask you before we started.
Yeah.
It's Han, right?
Yes. Because the thing is, if I didn't write it the way that I wrote it there, immediately I'm saying Han. And I'm like,
Well,
but
and
that's incorrect.
but you'll love this. The way that you wrote it, which absolutely is Han, my brain still went, "But could it be Han?"
Oh, of course, because I don't write it phonetically the way it's supposed to be. I write it phonetically for this old drained, mushed out, broken down noggin that I've got that's like
Well,
barely there.
and this is the thing, the listeners are going, "Lauren, you've said you viewed the documentary. You don't remember how to pronounce the people's names?" Everything is gone. I don't know how to
Oh,
tell you
yeah.
this. It's like a liquidation sale in my head, okay? It's like everything must go
It's a fire sale.
constantly.
Yeah.
It's a fire sale. and, and there's nothing left. There's nothing
Yeah.
left. I lose
Why?
language routinely. Like, I don't know what 60 is going to look like for me. I really don't.
The other day, I forgot the word school bus. And people are like, "Oh, like, no, I'm not kidding." Like, they're
No, I
like,
I know.
in the middle of conversations, I'll just go, "I don't know what that's called." And
Yep.
then all of a sudden you're like grasping, trying to think of like something similar that you could then get that person to like get on your train of thought. But then all of a sudden you're like, well, now I don't really remember what the word was.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it's,
listen,
and yeah,
I get it.
like as soon as we finish recording, this is just going to leave my brain, not on purpose. This is just what my brain is now.
Yeah. Our brains are having fire sales at an alarming pace.
I was just gonna requote. I was just gonna talk about what was that about whimsy earlier. I already
Just
forget.
get used to the whimsy.
Yeah, I was like, if I lose the whimsy, I'm out. But then I was just like, oh god, but that would be such a good band name of
Lose the
like
whimsy?
losing whimsy.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
I'd have to be emo,
You just get desensitized to the whimsy.
desensitized to whimsy. That in itself, I mean, I want the book, the documentary, the
Yep.
song. I want everything with
Well,
that as a title.
what immediately came to my mind was desensitized to the whimsy, addicted to the shindig. One of my favorite lines. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not even a massive Red Hot Chili Peppers fans, but can't stop addicted to the shindig. The best. I love that line.
Oh, there are, I Shazammed a song the other day, and I know that I'm sounding like a nana, but because songs get super popular on the TikToks, and then I
Sure.
don't, I hear them when 2 weeks later when I see them as reels. But it's just always the popular ones that just every other video, it's the same song, and your brain is like overwhelmed. Um, I mean, that's I've never been older. That's Sabrina Carpenter. God, she's really something.
She
Um,
is.
but I can't even remember what the song was, but the line was something like, I hate the weather because I see you in the rain.
Oh,
And
sure.
my brain in that moment shut off, and I immediately Shazammed it so that I could like be able to write that down, because I write down things that move me in the moment. At least I'll have something to remember, you know.
Yeah, we're gonna be
Um,
like Memento by the time we're in our early 50s. It's
oh
just gonna
God,
be a body full of tattoos to remind us of the things we're forgetting.
that's where I should be tattooing, not maybe Garfield and Friends. Although it would be great to be like, oh, I remember that show. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know if I have enough room for all the memories I'm gonna need.
You and me both. We better write small. All right. We're, of course, discussing the Netflix documentary, What Jennifer Did. If you're not familiar, do not fret. I'll get you up to speed right now. In November 2010, three armed men entered the Ontario home of Han and Bick Pan. The men tied up the couple's daughter, Jennifer, before becoming violent and demanding money. Despite telling the couple that they would be safe if they cooperated, the three men shot both Han and Bick multiple times before leaving the house with a small sum of money. Jennifer managed to free her hands and call 911. But right from the start, the police felt that something was off about the entire thing, including the third victim, Jennifer. So, what really happened to the Pan family? And what was Jennifer hiding from police? Christy Oxborrow investigates.
And before I give the disclaimer, I'm just gonna say one of our longest chuckle chats.
Yeah,
Chuckle chats? Have we ever called it that? I'm
we
sure we
do
have.
now.
Chuckle chats just feels right. It's just nothing feels righter in the world than a good chuckle chat.
Chuckle Chats, brought to you by Bantor.
If you think that I haven't considered figuring out a way to have a logo for Bantor and making hockey jerseys out of it for no
Oh,
reason.
yep.
A Bantor jersey? Get out.
Yep.
I'd be into it. Anyhow, so don't worry, people. You've now officially skipped ahead far enough. We are getting to the actual case.
Absolutely.
But no, for real. Shout out to the people who love the Bantor.
Yeah.
So, disclaimer, this episode will contain brief mentions of self harm, rape, and suicide. So, trigger warning for those who need it. Wei Han Pan and Bic Ha Pan left Vietnam in 1979 and emigrated to Canada, where they settled in Markham, Ontario, which is about 30 kilometers or 19 miles northeast of downtown Toronto. They both got jobs working for an auto parts manufacturer called Magna International. They had 2 children, a daughter, Jennifer, in June 1986, and a son, Felix, in 1989. For whatever reason, because it was never stated anywhere, Felix attended private school while Jennifer went to public school.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, Felix also was at no mention in that
Yeah. I
documentary
had
at all. I had no
no.
idea he existed until I
Same.
looked into the family, and then I was like, "Oh, all right, fair
That's
enough."
interesting.
Yeah. So Jennifer was referred to as the golden child. She was enrolled in piano lessons when she was 4, figure skating lessons a couple years later. Jennifer was a talented athlete, winning multiple competitions and even setting her sights on the Winter Olympics. Unfortunately, when Jennifer was a preteen, she tore a ligament in her knee and had to give up her skating dreams.
Oh God.
And while she was disappointed, she put more of a focus into piano. Jennifer's piano teacher described her as exceptional and said that she was the best of the best. Han and Bick spent thousands of dollars every year entering Jennifer into piano competitions, which Jennifer consistently won. In high school, Jennifer received early acceptance from Ryerson University, where she studied for 2 years before transferring to the University of Toronto, where she earned a $3,000 scholarship to study pharmacology. From the outside, the Pan family was the quintessential perfect happy family. Which brings us to November 8th, 2010. Han was sleeping upstairs in bed. Bick, who had recently returned from her usual Monday night line dancing, was downstairs reading. And Jennifer was in her own bedroom upstairs. At the time, their son Felix was away at university. So shortly after 10 p.m., 3 armed men entered the Pan home. One of the men tied Jennifer's hands behind her back and then tied her upper right arm to the banister with a shoelace. The other 2 men brought Han downstairs to where Bick was sitting in the living room. They placed blankets over Han and Bick's heads and then demanded money. The Pan family wasn't rich per se, but I'd describe them as well off. Han and Bick worked hard for decades and managed to buy their house in 2004. They also owned a Lexus and a Mercedes and had about $200,000 in savings. The family lived in a modest neighborhood, so were the vehicles enough to make them a target, or were the thieves someone who knew the family personally? Regardless as to what brought the men to the house, the 3 men shot Bick and Han before fleeing the scene with about like $3,600, which I mean is a decent amount. I wouldn't say a good enough amount to kill a person, although I'm not sure that amount exists. But
Yeah.
Bick was fatally shot 3 times in the head at close range. She was 53 years old. Han, who was 56 at the time, was shot once in the shoulder and once in the face, specifically in the corner of one eye. He miraculously survived and managed to make his way upstairs before passing out. Jennifer, who was 24 at the time, was unharmed and left tied to the banister upstairs. At 10:30 p.m., she managed to get her cell phone which was kind of tucked back in the waistband of her pants. She pulled that out and called 911. She screamed that she didn't know where her parents were, and she said, quote, "Someone broke into our house and stole all this money." The Pans neighborhood was relatively safe and quiet, so the community was shocked by the incident. Police were also at a loss as to why someone would target them specifically. The house had been absolutely ransacked, which made the scene look like a robbery gone wrong. And while the suspects had left with a small sum of money, if it was just a robbery, then why did they leave valuables behind, like a safe, Hans' expensive watch, Bick's wallet, which had $240 in cash? And also, what about their cars? If either one was in, like, the driveway, if you were only there for money, you didn't take the car? Anyhow. So right out the gate, police were suspicious about the entire thing, so they needed to talk to the survivors. And since Han had been placed in a medically induced coma due to his injuries, the only person left to interview was Jennifer. They first spoke to her at 2:44 a.m., just 4 hours after the crime. Jennifer said her mother returned home around 9:30, and soon after that, an unknown man burst through Jennifer's bedroom door. The man tied Jennifer's hands behind her back and told her he had a gun. He said, "If you do what I say, no one will get hurt." According to Jennifer, who seemed fairly traumatized during her interview, the men kept yelling, "Show me where your money is." When the police asked about the family's financial status, Jennifer said they weren't rich, but they were comfortable. Jennifer said she also heard one of the men say, "You lied to us. You just had to cooperate." She then heard two pops, followed by the sound of her mother screaming. Jennifer called out for her mother and then heard two more pops. She said she didn't know, or she didn't see how the men initially got into the house, and she didn't know why her family was targeted. Jennifer described the first man as African American with dreadlocks, the second as African American with a thinner build, and the third had a Jamaican accent. And that was the best she could do for the suspects. Police spent hours canvassing the neighborhood, hoping for any sort of clue as to who the perps were and why they targeted the Pan family. A house across from the crime scene had security camera footage which showed three people entering the house and exiting about 30 minutes later. There was no sign of forced entry, and the video showed the perps just walking right through the front door. Unfortunately, the images were so grainy, it was impossible to be able to identify any of those three people. Then, about 6 hours into this canvas, one of the neighbors suggested that the robbery might be linked to a drug dealer named Daniel Wong, who dated Jennifer Pan for years. When police did a background check, they discovered that Daniel had previously been charged with drug possession and trafficking after police found half a pound of marijuana in his car. He was a high school senior at the time, and following his arrest, he was forced to transfer to a new school. Daniel was brought in for questioning on the third day of the investigation. He said he started dating Jennifer in high school, and they stayed together for about 7 years. Daniel said they broke up 2 years earlier when Jennifer's parents discovered the relationship and said they didn't approve. He described Bick and Han as incredibly strict. Daniel said while he was still friends with Jennifer, he had moved on and was currently dating a woman named Christine. He also said he had been receiving hundreds of harassing phone calls where the caller would hang up almost immediately. He also received harassing text messages that said things like, "We're watching you." 1 week before the attack on the Pan's home, Daniel received a text that read, "Bang, bang, bang." Daniel said that on the night of Bick's death, he was at home sleeping, claiming he arrived home somewhere between 9 and 10:30, which absolutely does not give him an alibi because the crime occurred between 10 and 10:30. So now police had more questions than answers. Who was harassing Daniel? Was it connected to the attack on the Pan family? Was Daniel somehow personally involved? And most importantly, why didn't Jennifer mention any of this during her own interview? So the police start to look a little deeper into Jennifer's life. A friend from high school described Jennifer as bubbly, happy, and confident. And this was the point in the documentary when the filmmakers got themselves into a scotch of hot water.
Yeah.
Um, while this friend was giving glowing reviews of Jennifer, they displayed several photos of Jennifer on screen. Jennifer was smiling brightly in each photo, and in one, she was giving a peace sign with both hands. Now, if you were to pause the documentary, and I know not many people do, people who have true crime podcasts absolutely do pause for note taking and to look a little closer at things. And just for an example,
Of course.
I absolutely do that. But if you were to pause and look at that photo, you'd notice that something was just off about it. The internet believes that that photo, among others, were enhanced by AI. And while I am not an expert in the field of photography, I agree fully. When you look at Jennifer's hands in the peace sign photo, her fingers like appear to be mangled, and one hand is just absolutely missing a thumb, which is very it's kind of what AI does.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's very typical of AI. Then there's another photo where she's doing a peace sign again, but just with one hand, and her fingers are just like weirdly elongated for what they should be. And then there's a third photo that was called into question where Jennifer's teeth appeared to have been altered in some way.
That one did bump me when I was just watching. The other ones,
Sure.
I guess I wasn't fully the tooth one. I think it's because I'm so aware of teeth. Like I look at everybody's
Sure.
teeth,
Sure.
and it bumped me to the point that I did go back.
Oh,
And I
sure.
was doing a pleasure view. I was watching for fun. I wasn't
Of
we didn't
course.
know we were going to cover the case, cover the story at that point. And I was like, "What's up with that tooth?" And then here's the thing though. It drew me in because I was like, "Does she have?" Because I knew that the family, yeah, maybe weren't filthy rich, but they were well off enough that they would appear could get, seek dental, help.
Sure.
And one tooth just looked so dramatic. So then I started looking and I was like, oh, her teeth look fine. So then I was like, I guess maybe she just got it fixed eventually, but I didn't even think that this could be the case. Anyway.
Well, the joke is that photo is the one they use as a side by side on the cover of
Right.
this documentary to show like two different sides of her, but it's like I just think I think they took a photo of her and maybe she was smiling in it, but they tried to make that smile bigger. Or
Right.
she wasn't smiling at all and they just made her smile in the photo. It just they made some real choices there.
Yeah.
Um, but since the filmmakers didn't disclose using any AI images, people online started saying that they were feeling like they were lied to. Executive producer Jeremy Grimaldi has outright denied the use of AI manipulation on the photos. He said, quote, any filmmaker will use different tools like Photoshop in films. The photos of Jennifer are real photos of her. The foreground is exactly her. The background has been anonymized to protect the source. And yeah, look, I get it. Filmmakers use a lot of different tips and tricks to make their final product look a certain way. But when you're making a documentary about a real person and a real crime, I just don't think you could take as many liberties as, say, theatrical filmmakers.
Of course. And also, there's a difference between anonymizing the background, which basically just means like blurring the background,
Mhm.
which, okay, or covering the face of people who you don't have releases from.
Yep.
We're all on board with this. We've all seen this before. We've all seen Dateline. Like that
100%.
is not at all out of the realm, but that's interesting. That's an interesting thing to say. Any filmmaker uses Photoshop? Any documentarian? I don't know about that.
Oh, yeah. Like in the Marvel movies? Sure.
Of course.
In a documentary about a real murder? Probably not, bud.
Really weird.
Yeah, it was it's just I need to see I need to see the originals
Yeah.
of those photos, and I don't like there's the fact that he's come out so quickly to be like, "Absolutely not, we did not." So I just don't know how there's no way they weren't. I
Yeah.
mean, those photos are gonna be, on our socials, but so you'll be able to look at them for yourself, but it's
Yeah.
just there's no way that those weren't absolutely altered, is the point.
Right.
Um, but, I am glad he mentioned the background of the photos, because in one photo, there's a shelf on a bookcase behind Jennifer that is at such an odd angle compared to every other shelf, uh, on that bookcase. Again, they claim they did not use AI photos, but to the untrained eye, it absolutely looks like they did. But the question is, why did they use AI photos? It feels like they were trying to portray Jennifer as a happy-go-lucky person for the sake of adding drama to the documentary,
Right.
which of course does not justify their choice. But once police learned about Jennifer's ex-boyfriend, they decided to bring Jennifer back to talk about it. Jennifer came in for a second interview on December 12th, 4 days after the crime.
November 12th. Yes.
Sorry, what did I say?
December.
I wrote December. That was
It's
on
okay.
me.
That's all right.
But yeah, thanks. Thank you for keeping me honest.
That
it
one I
is.
was like, I know I'm right on this.
Yeah, you are.
I've got
You
the
are.
numbers in front of me.
You do. Well, hey, I wrote it right on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh Lord. Anyhow, yes, November 12th. There we go. So now Jennifer admits to meeting Daniel during a high school band trip to Europe, where Daniel apparently helped Jennifer after she had an asthma attack. After that, they dated for about 6 years without her parents' knowledge or consent. She said they were very happy together. They dated off and on, but the relationship may have been more serious than that. According to a high school friend, after spending a full summer working, Jennifer spent her entire paycheck on a paintball gun for Daniel. When asked why, she said she just didn't have anyone better to spend it on. And to that I say, you were better.
Yeah.
You could also just spend it on yourself, but okay. No
Or
judgment.
save it.
We were all teen girls in love at one point.
Very true.
So, Jennifer said when her parents found out about Daniel, they were incredibly upset. They felt that Daniel wasn't an appropriate match. Jennifer said she cared about Daniel and he had been there for her in high school when she was going through a really difficult time. I assume she's referring to the fact that she was never a top student and yet her parents expected straight A's from her. There's also the fact that that was around the time of her torn ligament and she had to give up figure skating, which she seemed to genuinely love. When her parents first learned about Daniel, they told Jennifer to end things because they didn't approve of him due to his previous drug arrest. They told Jennifer she was going to apply to college, study something in the medical field, because Han felt that the medical field was the only acceptable option for his daughter. When Jennifer showed an interest in kinesiology, her father said Jennifer had to pick something more successful. And since she didn't have the stomach to be a doctor or a nurse, her only option, as far as her parents were concerned, was to become a pharmacist. So, after receiving early admission from Ryerson, Jennifer studied science there for 2 years before transferring to the University of Toronto, where she studied pharmacology. Or at least that's what her parents thought. Because during the interview, Jennifer admitted that while she was accepted to Ryerson, the offer got rescinded because Jennifer failed calculus in her senior year. But since she didn't want to let her parents down, Jennifer used Photoshop to forge report cards and even student loan documents to make her parents think she was attending Ryerson when she really wasn't. After 2 years, Jennifer then claimed to have transferred to the University of Toronto, where she studied for 2 more years before earning a bachelor's degree in science in 2008. Again, that's just what Jennifer's parents thought was happening. The truth was, Jennifer made a fake degree in Photoshop because she couldn't handle the high expectations that her parents had placed on her. But according to Jennifer, her parents had no idea that she faked her entire post-secondary education. During these fake school years, Jennifer got caught talking to Daniel on the phone, so her parents confiscated the phone and refused to let Jennifer go anywhere without them. Jennifer told her piano teacher that her parents don't trust her and that they were driving her crazy. Han and Bick also gave Jennifer an ultimatum to choose between them and Daniel. At this point, Daniel had a job managing a local Boston pizza, but Han and Bick still didn't approve of him because they felt he was going nowhere in life and that he would never be able to support a family. Jennifer ultimately chose her parents, although she secretly remained friends with Daniel. During this interview, Jennifer claimed Daniel's new girlfriend had been harassing her and telling her to stay away from Daniel. I don't know what the point was of telling the police this information, unless Jennifer was somehow suggesting Daniel's girlfriend was responsible for the attack on the Pan home. But either way, at this point, the police were incredibly suspicious of Jennifer, given the number of lies that she had already admitted to. Then on November 12th, the same day as Jennifer's second interview, her father, Han, woke up from his coma. He told police on the night of his wife's death he went to bed around 8:30 and woke up to a man pointing a gun in his face. Han said the man forced him downstairs where he could hear his wife hysterically telling the other men, "We don't have any money." Han said that he and Bick were placed on separate couches and that while he was being pistol whipped, his wife was begging for her life. During the chaos, Han saw Jennifer walk down the stairs. He said her hands were not tied, and she spoke to one of the intruders like a friend.
Mm.
Han then said to the detective, quote, "Use your police techniques to find out what Jennifer did."
I love that. I just love the use your police techniques.
Yeah.
To find out what Jennifer did.
Yeah.
I mean, it also just sounds like such a disappointed dad thing to say, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Wowzer. Well, listen, we're in it now. We're doing it.
Yeah.
What's going to happen next? You're going to find out after the break. So grab another drink, hit the can, and we'll be right back with more on the I've just this extra to this act has just gotten away from me. This is the fire sale I'm currently having a big
Yeah.
blowout sale at. We'll be right back with more on the What Jennifer Did episode of True Crime and Cocktails. On 3. 1, 2, 3. What's up, everybody?
Doing great.
My mouth is full of marbles because apparently in the latest fire sale, I've let go of all my language. Welcome back to the show. We're, of course, discussing the documentary What Jennifer Did. Before the break, we found out that Jennifer was keeping up some pretty big lies from her parents. And when her father came out of that coma, he gave police their marching orders. What happens next?
Well, before we go any further,
Yeah.
I know that people likely have a lot of questions regarding Jennifer's fake bachelor's degree because that was what I couldn't let go of
Of course.
during that documentary, because that's a huge, huge thing to pull off. So, for 4 years, Jennifer drove into Toronto, where instead of going to school, she would spend hours at cafes or libraries where she studied in the hopes of one day legitimately getting into pharmacology school. But sometimes she would just hang out with Daniel because he was living there at the time. To keep up with the ruse, Jennifer bought used textbooks and notebooks filled with study notes so that if her parents saw them, she would just be like, "Yeah, that's my stuff from school." She also forged school transcripts, student loan documents, and her degree. At one point, she convinced her parents to let her spend 3 nights a week in Toronto with a friend named Topaz. She wanted to be able the whole point of staying there is just cutting down on that commute, right? Well, her father was against it, but her mother thought it was actually a really good idea. And before you question it, surprisingly, Topaz is an actual person that Jennifer knew.
Okay.
I apologize because I assumed right away that that was a fake person. I was like, obviously she's gonna claim somebody, but it makes sense her parents would say yes only if they had met this person.
Yeah.
So I guess that makes sense. But Topaz, absolutely a real person that she knew. But when Jennifer stayed in town overnight, she just stayed with Daniel's family, who believed that Jennifer's parents absolutely approved of the relationship.
Hmm.
To help with money, Jennifer got a job at a restaurant. She taught piano lessons on the side and even bartended at the same Boston Pizza where Daniel was working as a kitchen manager at the time. Her parents, of course, thought that Jennifer was volunteering at the blood testing lab at a children's hospital, which would require her to work late nights and weekends. So she just spent nights and weekends in Toronto. Um, and then when it came time for her to graduate from the University of Toronto in 2008, she told her parents the course had over enrolled, so students were restricted to just one guest at grad. Jennifer said she felt guilty having to choose between her parents, so she decided to give that one invite to her friend Topaz as a thank you for letting her stay with her, and because they were such close BFFs.
Right.
Truth is, they knew each other, but they weren't particularly close. But around this time, Han starts getting suspicious because he noticed Jennifer would say she was leaving to go to work, but she never wore a work uniform. And she never had any sort of security or work badge. So one day, he outright followed her to the children's hospital. Jennifer later said she had to hide in the ER waiting room for hours until her father left. Then in May 2009, Han spoke to the hospital, who told him there was no record of Jennifer ever working there.
Oh boy.
He then called Topaz, who admitted Jennifer had never stayed the night with her. Han confronted Jennifer, who admitted she had been staying with Daniel. Jennifer then confessed she hadn't been attending university. Han threatened to kick Jennifer out, but Bick begged him to let her stay. I do also love that the fact that she left every day and came home around the same time was enough, as well as carrying around textbooks and notebooks that she bought off people, which I find fascinating. And that was enough that they were like, well, she's obviously going to school.
Yeah.
It's a wild lie. I don't know how she thought that was going to turn out. So after finding out that she had lied, they took away Jennifer's phone and laptop. They only let her use them when one of them was present. They also started going through her messages. They tracked the odometer on her car to make sure she wasn't going anywhere she wasn't supposed to. Han made Jennifer quit her 2 jobs, but he let her continue to teach piano on the side. He then forbid her from ever having contact with Daniel. Han later told police, quote, "I told Jennifer that she has to cease the relationship with Daniel Wong. If no, you have to wait until I'm dead."
Wow.
So at this point, police were already incredibly suspicious of Jennifer, as they didn't believe that there was any way she could have retrieved her cell phone from her waistband if her hands were tied behind her back. They were also suspicious because it seemed strange for the suspect to shoot 2 of the victims and leave one completely unharmed.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer tried to justify that by saying, well, they left her alone because she fully cooperated with them. Then on November 22nd, 2010, police brought Jennifer in for a third and final interview. They asked if her parents had any sort of life insurance policies. Jennifer said she wasn't sure, but she knew her parents had a policy on her because they used half the money from the policy to send Jennifer to school. She said, quote, "When they found out I didn't go to university, they asked for that money back." Which is an interesting thing to say since during the last interview, Jennifer admitted to lying about going to school, but she said her parents never found out about it. So now she's saying they
Oh,
did find
shit.
out about it.
Right.
Jennifer then claimed that she had told her parents she attended Ryerson for 2 years, but that she hadn't graduated. Jennifer admitted she had always struggled to live up to her parents' high expectations. She also admitted that Daniel filled an empty void within her. So she was furious that her parents wouldn't let them be together. Jennifer's obsession with Daniel, combined with her anger towards her parents, made the police believe Jennifer was somehow involved in this attack against her parents.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the point in the interview where the detective interviewing her decided to bend the truth a little. If you're horrified by that, you're not alone. But in Canada, the police are permitted to exaggerate, lie, or mislead a suspect during interviews. They can claim they have evidence against the person, like fingerprints or DNA found at a scene. They can minimize the seriousness of the crime, outright claim the person being interviewed could be prosecuted more harshly if they don't cooperate. Police can claim that they'll help the person if they confess, or they can say they stopped recording the interview when they didn't. They can threaten to arrest a person's friends or family, and even tell the person they failed a polygraph test, even if they did not. It feels wrong, and I'm unsettled by it. I mean, there's nothing I can specifically do about it, but just know I don't like it. But in this particular case, the detective told Jennifer that satellites work like an X-ray. So they can use the satellites to see people moving around in their house. I pray that technology doesn't exist, but I feel like it probably does, but it terrifies me anyway.
Right.
And I'll say it, if they look this weekend, I'm going to be moving nowhere.
They'll send someone to make sure there's proof of life. She hasn't moved in 48 hours. Send a drone.
100%. That's my goal. So the detective implied that because of the satellites, they could see the movement of everyone in the house on the night of her mother's murder. Jennifer then said, quote, "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I needed them to kill me." Jennifer told police she had agreed to pay a man named Homeboy $10,000 to enter her house and kill her because she didn't want to live anymore and she was unable to do it herself. So why was Jennifer so unhappy? And was it more than just the end of her relationship with Daniel? Well, Jennifer's parents, especially her father, were known as, or were what is known as tiger parents, which is basically when parents become incredibly strict and like such a huge part of their children's lives for the sake of ensuring their child's success for the future. They planned out her entire life, including forcing her into piano lessons as a young child, not allowing her to attend any non-academic school events like sports or dances, not allowing her to date until after university. Even Jennifer's father outright said the only suitable career for her was the medical field, which is intense. Once her parents caught her lying, they took away her phone, went through her messages, checked the odometer on her car. It took nearly 2 years for Jennifer to earn her phone privileges back. And again, she was like 22 at the time.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's one of the notes I wrote down that was like, that's intense.
Oh,
She's an
100%.
adult.
Yes. Oh, 100%. In early 2009, Jennifer posted on Facebook, quote, "Living in my house is like living under house arrest." She also said the pressure she was put under to succeed caused her to start self-harming in the 8th grade. As a mother, I do not personally agree with tiger parenting. Um, but that being said, no one deserves to die because of it. Neither the children nor the intense parents. If you want out from under your parents' rules, move out. Go stay with a friend until you have the money to get a place of your own. I know that option isn't always available. But it's just, if we're leaning towards her being involved in this because her parents are strict, it's like, well, at this point, you're 24. So then it's time to
Yeah.
start thinking of other options. But
Yeah.
so how do we get from a 24-year-old girl being angry at her parents to her parents being shot? Well, Jennifer said she reconnected with Daniel after some time apart, and he gave her a new cell phone so they could talk without her parents knowing. Unfortunately, Daniel was now dating a woman named Christine and was no longer interested in a romantic relationship with Jennifer. When Jennifer complained about her parents, Daniel agreed to introduce her to 28-year-old Lenford Crawford, who went by the name Homeboy. Daniel told police he only reached out to Lenford after Jennifer pestered him with 99 texts and phone calls in a single day. Which, is intense.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but speaking of Jennifer sending a barrage of texts, remember when I mentioned Daniel had been receiving a bunch of hang-up calls and threatening text messages from that anonymous person for months? Turns out it was Jennifer all along. She just really hated that Daniel had moved on with someone new.
Yeah.
But also, and this was something not in the documentary, Jennifer took it even further. She allegedly told Daniel that a strange man showed up at her front door when she was home alone. When the man produced a police badge, Jennifer let him inside, and a group of men followed him, overpowered her, and gang raped her in her own home.
Jesus.
Jennifer also told Daniel that days after that alleged attack, she received a bullet in the mail. She told Daniel that both the bullet and the attack were set up by Daniel's new girlfriend to scare Jennifer off.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now, to be clear, from the best I can tell, the bullet and the attack did not happen. Also, Daniel seemed far more smitten with the new girlfriend than he was with Jennifer, so he wasn't interested in leaving her. So I don't the new girlfriend did not have a reason to try and scare off Jennifer. So it just was, a word that comes to mind, extreme.
Yeah.
Extreme.
Yeah.
So after Daniel connected Jennifer with Lenford Crawford, aka Homeboy, Jennifer used text messages to hire Lenford to kill her parents. She allegedly agreed to pay him $10,000 from the $500,000 inheritance that she and her brother Felix were going to receive after their parents' deaths. When police searched through Jennifer's phone, they discovered Daniel had in fact introduced Jennifer and Lenford. And when Daniel said he was no longer interested in being with Jennifer romantically, she told him she wanted to call the whole thing off. Daniel replied with, quote, "You said you wanted this with or without me. You said you wanted this for you." Police said they read through 700,000 lines of text messages and voicemails to get the evidence they needed. They discovered Lenford had gone to the Pans neighborhood on Halloween to do some recon. Then on November 8th, he texted Jennifer after work game time. But if Jennifer's parents were monitoring her cell phone, how did they not know? Well, apparently they only knew about the Samsung phone that she used to text and call friends. They didn't realize that Daniel had given her an iPhone, which she used specifically just to talk to Daniel and Lenford. I don't know what phone Jennifer was using to send harassing messages to Daniel, or if she just blocked her number somehow. I I don't know, because he claims he didn't know who the calls and messages were from, so I don't know how she pulled that off. But on the night of November 8th, 2010, when Bic Pan returned home, Jennifer came downstairs to say goodnight. She then went over and quietly unlocked the front door before heading upstairs, where at 10:02 p.m., she turned the lights on in the study as a signal to let Lenford know the doors were ready. 3 minutes later, Lenford, along with 30-year-old David Milvagnum and 30-year-old Eric Carty, entered the house, each carrying their own gun. While one of the men stayed downstairs with Bic, the other two went upstairs, grabbed Han from his bed, and dragged him downstairs. David and Lenford covered Han and Bic's heads with blankets and started screaming at them for money. Bic was shot in the head 3 times. The last words she said were, "Don't hurt my daughter,"
Oh.
which is incredibly heartbreaking, given that her daughter potentially set up this entire thing.
Yeah.
Han was shot in the face and shoulder and miraculously was able to make his way upstairs looking for Jennifer before he eventually passed out. The 3 men then staged the scene to look like a robbery gone wrong. Eric tied Jennifer's hands behind her back and used the shoelace to tie Jennifer's right upper arm to the banister. After the 3 men left, Jennifer called 911. Jennifer Pan was officially charged with the first-degree murder of her mother and the attempted murder of her father. Following another interview with police where he confessed to setting up the entire thing for Jennifer, Daniel Wong was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Soon after, Lenford Crawford, Eric Carty, and David Milvagnum were all arrested and charged with first-degree murder and attempted murder. Jennifer Pan went to trial in March 2014. She took the stand and told the jury she'd been suicidal and she hired Lenford to kill her, not her parents. She claims she gave the men $3,600 in cash, which she found in the bedroom, before trying to call the whole thing off. But Lenford and his associates allegedly became so enraged they decided to kill Jennifer's parents instead. But since Jennifer had a second secret cell phone, it's surprising that if she was in fact a victim, why she didn't use that phone, or either phone for that matter, to call the police when she first found men had entered her home. And if that doesn't suggest that Jennifer may have been involved, how about the fact that 10 months before the crime, Jennifer approached someone else to kill her parents?
Mm.
Jennifer spoke with a friend from school named Andrew. When Jennifer told him about the struggles she had with her overbearing parents, Andrew introduced Jennifer to his roommate, Ricardo Duncan. Jennifer paid Ricardo $1,500 to follow her father to work and kill him in the parking lot. Jennifer even admitted to the police she had paid Ricardo, but he had ghosted her. Ricardo claimed that when Jennifer asked him to kill her father, he said no. He claims she gave him $200, which he returned immediately because he was offended that she even asked him. The trial lasted 9 months and included more than 50 witnesses and 200 exhibits. In the end, Jennifer was found guilty of first-degree murder and attempted murder. She was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years, as well as a concurrent life sentence for the attempted murder charge. Lawyers claimed that neither Daniel nor Lenford were at the scene on the night of the attack, but rather worked as middlemen between Jennifer and the men who actually carried out the crime. However, Daniel Wong, Lenford Crawford, and David Milvagnum were found guilty and sentenced to 2 life sentences to be served concurrently. It was never determined which man or men pulled the trigger at the house because they all took guns. So we don't know.
And then they all must have either sold each other out or covered for each other.
100%.
Yeah.
Now, Eric Carty, his lawyer became ill during the initial trial, so that ended up as a mistrial for him. In December 2015, Eric pled guilty to conspiracy to commit murder, and he received an 18-year sentence with a chance of parole after 9 years. In June 2018, Eric Carty was found dead in his cell at a prison in BC. He was 38 years old. His cause of death has not been publicly released. Then in May 2023, the Ontario High Court ordered a retrial on the grounds that the judge in the original trial deprived the jury by not presenting all possible theories outside of a home invasion gone wrong and murder for hire. Other options could have put second-degree murder and manslaughter on the table, which come with lighter sentences than those that were doled out. And technically, it will just be a new trial for the murder of Bic Pan. The conviction for attempted murder still stands, so Jennifer, Daniel, Lenford, and David will all remain in prison until that new trial. As of this record, the new trial date has not been set. Even after nearly 14 years, Jennifer Pan maintains her innocence. Felix Pan, who was 21 at the time of his mother's murder, became an engineer and eventually moved to the West Coast to try and distance himself from his infamous sister. He has since returned to Eastern Canada, where he remains no contact with Jennifer. Han Pan is now unable to work due to the injuries he sustained during the attack. He also suffers from insomnia, nightmares, anxiety attacks, and chronic pain. Following Jennifer's arrest, Han requested a no-contact order against his daughter. No-contact orders limit or prevent the accused from contacting the victim and their family. His request was approved by a judge. During Jennifer's trial, Han read a victim impact statement saying, quote, "When I lost my wife, I lost my daughter at the same time. I don't feel like I have a family anymore. Some say I should feel lucky to be alive, but I feel like I am dead too. I hope my daughter Jennifer thinks about what happened to her family and can become a good, honest person someday." Reporting for True Crime and Cocktails, I'm Christy Oxborrow.
Oh, wowzer. What a wild one. I just feel
Right?
like, I also, it's Canadian. It always feels closer to home for some reason. Also, I mean, listen, we've had lots of crimes happen up there, of course, but you just don't hear a lot of crimes coming out of Markham typically. So it feels like,
Yeah.
fascinating. Well, listen, let's take one more break, grab another drink, hit the can one more time, and we'll be right back to wrap it up with our final thoughts and theories on the What Jennifer Did episode of True Crime and Cocktails. 3 on 3. 1, 2, 3. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're, of course, discussing What Jennifer Did. I have lots of thoughts.
Can't wait.
I love that my first notes were Chuckle Chats, brought to you by Bantor, and Can't Stop Addicted to the Shindig. I like that I just wrote down that lyric that I apparently love so much. What a psycho.
No, a
But I'm
delight.
also the person who, when we came back from the first break, I just forgot how I come back from breaks. I started introducing the show again. I can't.
I mean, look, it's you know what? I was gonna come up with like it's the beginning of a long weekend.
No,
You've been doing a lot of,
uh-uh.
things like I was gonna come up with something.
There's no excuse for this.
And then
It
I
is what it is.
realized you don't need an excuse.
Yeah.
I've spent my whole life having an excuse for like, oh, I'm gonna sit down for just a minute, but it's because I did all these other things, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna sit my ass down.
Yep.
Period.
And it's a full sentence.
Yeah, just know that period ends with a T.
Period.
Yeah, I
Period.
like it because you got the period and then you add the T, and that's like the exclamation point
Yep.
in the word to let people know that I mean it. I don't know
Absolutely.
where that accent comes from, but the point is, we don't need to come up
No,
with a reason.
it's nobody's business why I'm losing my mind.
We're
Um,
broken mentally.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, you're gonna love what I'm jumping to. The AI.
Yes.
I gotta talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
Any filmmaker uses Photoshop. These words have haunted me. I I think the thing that's weird for me, because you and I had texted about this briefly too, where it was like, what was the motive for using the AI? Like, what was the idea? Why did you need this? So here's some questions I have. Was it that there weren't enough pictures of her happy, which I know you posed to me, that it was like they wanted to paint her a certain way so that when the turn happened,
Yes.
it was more dramatic? Okay, I can wrap my head around that. I'm not defending it. I'm just trying to figure out what the motivation was.
Sure.
Um, and then I was like, is it that there weren't enough photos of her that the film had permission to use? Was it that and
Oh.
I don't know what the rules are. If you've been arrested for a crime, if you're in prison, do you have rights to your own image? I don't know the answer to that. We've got lawyers that listen to this show. Somebody must know the answer to this. Um, but then this makes a bigger question that I have, which is that how we're handling this now, filmmakers? And I'm speaking specifically to documentarians. So if you don't have enough pictures of somebody, you just use AI to come up with new ones. And then my question is, what's the legality about us owning our own image if it's made by AI? Because it is our likeness, but it isn't our image. And I know that Taylor Swift was going through some things because there was AI pornography made of her
Oh,
with her face on a body that wasn't hers, and I know that it got pulled from the internet, which they somehow managed to do, which really speaks to the power of Taylor Swift. And then there was talk that it was actually potentially going to make legislative changes in the American government to try and protect people from this kind of use of AI. But I don't know what the follow-up to that has been. I don't know if there is a discernible or rather definitive follow-up to that. All I have to say is I hope I make the laws. It's time now. Let's make the laws now because I don't want to see where this is at in 5 or 10 years and then be trying to make the laws then when there's fake pornography of anybody out there. I mean, I just feel like this is the time. I find it
yeah.
terrifying. I think the
Uh-huh.
idea also that perhaps if you create AI images of someone, then you would just have consent to use them because it's not the person's actual image is terrifying and a slippery
Yep.
slope. And again, if we don't deal with this now, I know I'm sounding like I'm sounding like the people in my film and television industry last year on strike, but it's true. It's scary when you think about what that means and what that means also in terms of I guess the other question I have, I know I'm jumping around a little bit here, but like were there not better options? Why didn't you keep generating more AI images until you got some that didn't have a weird tooth and weird hands? And if you kept getting ones with weird hands, for example, crop them out. This is the other thing. Like, I think the thing that I find fascinating, and I'm gonna go here, is we all saw it. The tooth took me out of the film,
Yeah.
right? So if it's that obvious, it has to be obvious to the filmmakers that used them in the film. No one would have looked at those photos and go, no one's going to notice. We all noticed.
Oh, yeah.
So then I put my conspiracy theorist hat on and say they did it deliberately
Oh.
because look at the press they've gotten. Yes, it's negative press that people are saying, oh, these photos were used by AI. Yes, they're denying that they used it. He's saying again that it was only background, that they didn't do anything to the foreground. Um, but it worked. We're talking about it now,
Very true.
right? To me, it just feels not plausible. It feels implausible that people looked at those photos and thought no one's going to notice. It's
Oh,
too obvious. And also,
especially
again,
now.
they could crop out the hands. Like you could zoom in on only her face. There's, you can get creative. And by the way, if they had just done some creative cropping or tried to generate more images potentially, then no one would have known. And yes, that's scary and that's not right. And I'm not defending it. But the fact that it was so obvious is the only reason that anybody figured it out.
Yeah.
So the only other option to me is that someone else generated the images and gave them to them and claimed that they were real when they weren't. I have to say it because we try and talk about everything from all sides on this show. So there
Sure.
is a world where in which they were trying to obtain images, they were given images that potentially were created by AI, and those were the images they were given from people. That's also possible.
Sure.
What I would say to that is, still, did you look at them next to other ones and go, hey, this one with the weird tooth, maybe we shouldn't use that one? I mean, that would be what would come to my personal mind. But who am I? Merely someone who is in film and television for a living. I just think it's an interesting aspect of this,
Oh, yeah.
right? We're
Oh,
again, who is your audience? The audience of these documentaries is people like us, people who are into true crime, people who are going to pause and go back, people who are
yeah.
looking at these things through a discerning eye. I know there's people that watch this content that don't do that. But I would say of most genres that are out there, true crime fans are keen and ready and paying attention. So to
100%.
me, it just doesn't, something feels off to me. Something feels off to me about this just being like, we don't know. It's like, really?
Oh, there's no way they didn't know. Like, it's the second you look at it, you're like, something's wrong. Something's
Yeah.
wrong. Like, they are very, very clearly altered in a way that, again, I just would love to see. Um, I'd love to see the originals to see how different it is. Yes, to your point, it's possible somebody had them and was like, "Oh, I have pictures
It's
from when
possible.
we hung out, and here
It's
they go,"
possible.
and it looked nothing like her. But it's wild. I Yeah, I can't tell if they purposely did it because there were no photos of her, like, and there weren't photos of her that level of happy to be the contrast of them showing her at the end after being arrested, which is like the whole cover of the thing, which is half of the smiley on one side and half of absolutely
Well,
not
and
smiley
then
on the other.
that makes me also irritated because, look, I'm not defending any of her behavior or actions. I want to make that very, very clear. I'm not defending her at all. But two things can be true at the same time. When we also hear a little bit about her story and what her life was, and that she was living in a very controlled environment and whatnot, and then had also spoken at times about self-harm, had been spoke about, there was struggle happening for her. I think some of her
Yeah.
actions prove that she was struggling. Um, maybe there weren't a lot of pictures of her smiling. Maybe that
Yeah.
wasn't who she was. And the idea that you would be trying to manipulate the viewer in some way, first of all, it kind of paints her as more of a villain. Because if you're looking at her super happy go lucky and then you find out that she's lied about all these things and that she's, you know, arranged these people to commit murders or a murder, it paints her as being, in my opinion, it paints her as being more of a villain because it's like, oh, look, she was living her best life. She was happy go lucky, all of the above. And look at these
Yeah.
things she did. If there was no pictures of her happy, if it felt like it was like she was not that, tell that story. What do you get out of
Yeah.
making her look like more of a villain?
Well,
Again, and I'm not suggesting she's an innocent at all. Her actions and behaviors are not justifiable. It just it's just very interesting to me that again, you know, we're I just think it makes me go like, "Oh, we're seeing behind the curtain in a way that we shouldn't." Like to me it's like follow the story, tell the truth, tell the real story. It's tragic
100%.
either way.
Oh, 100%. It's
And I
also wild that they would be like, she was super happy, super whatever. Look at the swift change. And that they would be willing to do that, knowing that there's going to be another trial.
Right.
So it's like, well, now it's like if you did it intentionally to make the audience be like, oh, wow, she really did like a 180. It's wild. Like, how could someone do that? You're going to change how future juries feel about her going into it.
100%. And again, you know, was it that there was a quick 180, or was it that she had been struggling for some time? Because when you listen to the content and that it's like her Olympic dreams were dashed, she wasn't doing well, she wasn't supposed to see this guy, she faked going to university, like there's a lot happening here that speak to a not a happy-go-lucky existence.
Yeah.
You know. Um It's fascinating. It's all fascinating. But yeah, I'm very curious about if we'll ever hear any more about the whole AI controversy, because it's also just bizarre to me. They had so much footage of her in the police interrogations. They used so much footage of her. It's like, did you need a lot more photos? Like, I get that, you're trying to curate and you're trying to, provide images and all of the above. We've all seen true crime documentaries more than once. We know that this is how it works. It's just odd to me. I feel like this is the first time, if this has been happening prior to now, and I don't know how much that would happen because, again, the AI technology hasn't really been available, I feel like, to people before the last year, maybe 2. Um, we've just never seen it, or it's always been hidden better if this has happened
Sure.
before, I guess is my point.
Yeah.
Fascinating. The idea again that it was like, you can't stomach being a nurse or a doctor, so you have to be a pharmacist, like a kinesiologist isn't good enough. I mean, again, that's interesting rationale. Interesting. Forging all of the student loan docs, the report cards, forging her degree, again, like, it does feel like she had gotten in so far over her head,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like, there's so much motive here.
Yes.
So much motive that it's again, it's a lot. It's a lot. That's just a lot to back out of. And then the fact that she got caught, the fact that her father found this out, the fact that then she lived that way as an adult in her 20s with no phone or laptop unless she was being parentally supervised in her 20s.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, again, a lot of motive. A lot of motive. And look, I can't believe these words are even gonna come out of my mouth. I'm not comparing, but obviously I'm comparing because I'm saying it. It's interesting that we also live in a society where we're interviewing Gypsy Rose on Mother's Day.
Mm.
And she's speaking, you know what I mean? Now, obviously Gypsy Rose was enduring a very high level of abuse from the time, physical abuse, from the time she was born. Um, I'm still not excusing the fact that there was a murder that happened. We're not excusing murder here at all, but it's just interesting to me that in a society where again, Gypsy Rose is out of prison and is existing in pop culture and being kind of almost celebrated in a way, that then we
Oh,
have
yeah.
this documentary where it's like, you could have gone the other way with it. You could have painted her to be a very sympathetic character, because in some ways it sounds like, from what we know, and we can only go by the information we've been given, it sounds like she had a
Right.
really kind of very mentally taxing living situation. Again, not the same as Gypsy Rose, but it's just interesting to me that there would be this want to portray her in a different way when it's like, you could have portrayed it either closer to the actual factual truth, or you could have pushed it the other way and made her look miserable the entire time. Um, I know that all documentaries have the ability to be biased, and that's a part of it. It's from the point of view of the documentarian and how they see the subject and all of the above. I just think there's a lot of interesting choices filmically, which we don't normally talk about on this show. Typically, we're just talking about the facts. We're just talking about the facts of the case at hand. But this is interesting because it reminds you that when we're dealing with any sort of documentary, there's always going to be a lean, there's always going to be a tilt. That's just human nature when it's being
Right.
told, is it being told completely objectively is my point. And this is, making me think about that more when we're looking at these documentaries, in
Oh,
general.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, you're right. They absolutely could have made us look at her life and go, oh, I actually feel bad for her.
Absolutely.
But they really chose to go the other way.
Yeah, it's interesting. And look, what is right and what is wrong? I don't know. I think what is right and what is wrong is presenting all the facts objectively. But again, then you could also argue that it's like, is it ever fully objective? Are you ever 100% objective? I mean, that's like part of the
Sure.
medium, right? You're gonna love this. Shout out to Boston Pizzas. That crispy chicken pecan salad is a thing of my dreams. Also, love that dill dip. Do they still have that? I don't know.
The honey dill dip?
Yeah,
They do.
I love that.
They do.
I love that.
I'm obsessed with the 7 cheese baked ravioli.
I have to try that the next time I'm home.
I feel this is bold. I feel I've perfected it because I add certain things and do it
Right.
in a certain way that I'm very happy with. But now, as an app, you can just get those ravioli bites and they're deep fried.
Okay, I'm putting on my list. When the next time I'm in Canada, trip to BP's.
Yeah.
All right. She couldn't use her phone and laptop when they were present. I just wrote, she's an adult. This is wild. Like that is, again, that's really something. Then I wrote down her third interview was on November 22nd, 2010. We need to give a shout out to Christy Oxborrow for not blatantly stating that was her own birthday. She didn't say it. She's a hero to all of us for not making this about herself. And to that I say, she should have. She's allowed.
If you think I didn't consider it as like some sort of like, which happened to be my whatever birthday. But then I was like, no, that's not the tone of the moment. So I let it go. I was choosing
Don't
to
do it
let
on
it go.
our account. Don't do it on our account.
You're right. I should have made it a full side note.
Oh, I love it. Okay, it took 2 years for her to get her phone privileges back. Wild. When I think about I mean, I was out of the house when I was 18. Like,
Sure.
there was no knowledge of what was going on my phone. I can't imagine being 22 to 24 and not have I mean, again, that's hard to wrap my head around.
Yeah.
Okay, this bit that you put in that wasn't in the documentary, the story she told Daniel about the group of men and the assault, sending her a bullet in the mail, saying that it was Christine, his girlfriend. It's interesting to me that this wasn't in the documentary. This, I'll say it in true crime speak, this really speaks to state of mind. And I feel like, again, did the filmmakers not know this or what? Because to me also, this speaks to someone that's having some mental health struggles.
Yeah.
Right? Unless this really happened, but I'm fairly certain that it did not. We believe women on this show, obviously. It feels like in the larger sense of her pathology and the fact that she was saying this was all Christine's doing. I don't know how someone would potentially do that. This woman, we also know that she was secretly sending, all of these texts and phone calls to Daniel. Again, it feels like there is another thing at play for her here. Now you asked, how did she manage to block her number from Daniel? It's almost as though someone who hosts a popular true crime podcast, when trying to surprise her co-host for her birthday, could have potentially downloaded a simple app and had a free reign to contact that person using a very specific number or series of numbers, to which I say I'm not promoting it, but let's just say it's easy.
Oh my God, you're right.
It's very easy
You're right.
to hide your number and text somebody.
Yeah. It's just amazing that in that moment, I almost didn't respond to the message you wanted me to respond to.
Right.
Because I was like, oh, I don't believe this. This is fake.
Right.
And it wasn't until I like briefly mentioned it to you, which I wasn't even going to, but then I briefly mentioned it to you. And then you were like, oh, you should probably respond.
Yep.
Like, just see where it goes. That seems legit. And I was like, I don't know. It doesn't feel legit.
I had to let you come to me. It was going to be too obvious if I told you to do it.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Listen,
yeah, you're right.
It was my greatest work.
Oh, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is it's easy. Well, listen, I think my last thought is simply, you know, fascinating to me that this retrial has been ordered. Fascinating to me that it's interesting that Daniel was found as guilty as everyone else.
Mm.
Um, I get it, I understand it, but it's just interesting to me that look, I'm gonna be here's what I'm trying to say. I'm gonna be riveted by this retrial. It hasn't started yet, right?
Right, yeah, they haven't even set a
Yeah.
date yet.
I'm just curious because again, it's interesting that it was kind of like everybody you go to jail and you got a life sentence and you got a life sentence, you know, not to bring back Gypsy Rose, but that is again a very popular case in which she did not commit the murder herself. She asked someone else to do it, and of course, she has been released from prison. Now, I know that we're dealing with the United States versus Canada. I get it. I also know that there's an additional charge, which is the attempted murder of Han.
Sure.
I get that, but it's just interesting to me now that this is on my radar. I'm going to be very interested to kind of like follow along and see if it moves the needle or not. This whole real retrial. Um, I think again, obviously we got to feel for Felix, her brother. What a absolute nightmare. Your family
Yeah.
has been completely. You've lost your mother. Your father is disabled, can't work. You've lost your sister. Um, that feels like it would be very overwhelming. And I'm not negating at all the loss of life or, of course, Han's disability that he now unfortunately has to live with. Don't get me wrong. Um, but it's interesting because again, Felix was not mentioned in the documentary at all from my memory, and you corroborated that as well. So
Yeah.
this man is definitely it feels like not wanting any part of this, and I can't blame him because what a absolute tragedy on all sides.
Oh, 100%. I would absolutely do the same and bow out of,
Yeah,
like,
and I
that.
wonder if he was contacted by the filmmakers and said, "No, thank you," which again, I fully respect.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, I mean, it's what a shit show.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't even know, like I also can't believe, I mean, I shouldn't be this surprised, but I can't believe with all of the evidence pointing at she absolutely hired those people,
Right.
that she's still like, "But I didn't. I didn't hire them to kill my parents."
Well, it's interesting also, I hired them to kill me. Um, there's a few things with that I find interesting. One, if that was the case, then you would have needed to give all the money up front from the get.
Yes.
If you're hiring someone to kill you, which would be a first, I feel like, that we've heard of, you would need to pay that in advance because I don't need to tell you, you'd be dead. And
Yep.
then what I would offer about that is why would you then be having them come to the house? Why would you be having them come to the house if your parents are both going to be home? If the plan was that you wanted someone to murder you because you didn't feel like you could take your own life, uh, and this is the plan someone's agreed to, I don't understand why it would have been carried out in this manner if you didn't want to risk your family members also getting hurt. That feels a
Correct.
little bit. That's a little tough for me to wrap my head around.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I don't buy it at all,
Yeah.
especially assuming that in those text messages was the information of, "I will give you the money from the inheritance I'm gonna get." It's like, well, but then that doesn't explain, I mean, you're not gonna get the inheritance after. There's not gonna be an inheritance if you die.
Right.
So it's just like it doesn't make sense, and to your point, it's like, okay, well, get agree to meet them somewhere else.
Yeah. It's
And
also
also
just not something we typically hear about, like somebody hiring a hitman to kill themselves. That's again, that's a new one for me. I don't feel like I've ever heard of that before. Not
also,
saying
why
it's
3 of them?
impossible, but yeah. And that was another thing that I found interesting, because you had mentioned that they left with $3,600 and, when they left the crime scene. Um, Which, yeah, I'm not turning my nose up on $3,600. Don't get me wrong. I'd happily would take that money in a lottery. But yeah, it's like, what is a price to kill somebody? I agree with you. Like, there is no price that, again, I wouldn't have a price. So I don't know how to speculate. I think the thing I found interesting was just the idea that she's hired this person for 10 grand and then he's brought two people. And so then are they splitting that 3 ways? What is that looking like? Was the 3,600 a part of the 10K or was that on top of? And then it just, yeah, I guess for me, it's hard to look, I can't wrap my head around killing anybody. It's part of the reason I'm fascinated with true crime because for me,
Sure.
it's like I can't imagine. So the idea that it's like, yeah, for $3,300, I'm gonna shoot someone in the face.
Oh, yeah.
It's just I don't know even what to say about that. I think it's wild and I don't know. I don't know. When you hear about the amounts that other people have paid, obviously, I can't personally wrap my head around it, but I think this feels low in the true crime world. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? We do that. We've done a lot of episodes of this show. You hear a lot of times about what people are being offered. Um, And then the fact that it was like, oh, she had offered someone else like 1,500. What is this
Right?
world that these people are in? Like, what's happening? Like, and look, I understand that offer got either taken and she got ghosted or turned down, whatever the truth may or may not be. Um, yeah, that speaks to state of mind for her again to me. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's also like, what's happening? What's going on? You know?
I just can't imagine saying to anybody that I don't know, "Hey, for like a couple $100, would you kill my parents?" Like, I just can't imagine that conversation ever happening, especially when she outright told the police, "Well, I gave him 1,500, but he ghosted me," as though she's the victim in this.
Right.
And then him being like, "Well, she actually gave me 200, but I gave it right back." So it's just like, there's a big difference between $200 and $1,500.
And still $1,500 to kill somebody, like, I mean,
Yeah.
I understand that some people are very desperate for lots of different reasons, and maybe that would take that offer, but I don't know, the whole thing just is so bleak. It just feels all so very bleak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Well, listen, Christy Oxborough, fantastic work as always. Of course, you bring the goods, you bring the things that don't make it to the dock, and listen, we don't deserve you. Straight up.
Ugh. Look, it's an honor to be here.
Well, the pleasure is mine. And we thank you, dear listeners, for being with us on this journey. If you haven't already, give us a follow on the socials on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at True Crime and Cocktails, on Twitter at Not Detectives. If you'd like some bonus content, go over to patreon.com/True Crime and Cocktails to learn more about our subscription-based service over there. And of course, the only place for official True Crime and Cocktails merch is, of course, truecrewmerch.com. So check that out as well if you're interested. Christy, do you want to tell the people about next week's episode?
There's not one.
That's right.
Yeah.
Next week, we're dark.
We are. Uh, yeah. Things happen. So there's not going to be an
Yes.
episode on May 28th.
But there will be June 4th.
On June 4th, on the June 4th episode of True Crime and Cocktails, Unsolved Mysteries, Don Henry and Kevin Ives.
We're going back to our roots, folks. Let's do an OG Unsolved Mysteries. I cannot wait. It's what brought both of us to the true crime world to begin with as children. So what better thing to do than, of course, go back to our roots.
Yeah.
Christy, do you want to say goodnight to the people?
Good night, Wade the Duck.
Good night, Red Hot Chili Peppers. Can't stop addicted to the shindig.